So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. We welcome in former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Frank Corrado.
Boys,
I hope you didn't stay up late to watch that one last night. Oh, God, that was a tough watch.
I watched some of it, didn't watch all of it. What a
put you to
difference.
sleep? Were you dozing after the first period?
Well, I battled through the first, watched the second, and I was like, I feel like their game's in a good place. And like I have a travel day today. Like I feel confident. I feel confident about what I saw in the second period.
Yeah.
I think I'm okay to go to bed. And I'm sure people will chirp me for that. East Coast guy doesn't stay up, watch games. Whatever. I'll take the criticism.
You had travel.
No.
You're exonerated.
Frank stays up to watch all the West Coast games usually. It's just the product has to keep him awake.
So what you missed was the team playing back-to-backs that had a full practice, not a morning skate. That team had the better third.
I know. I was going to say I'm going to put out a statement. Just going to put out a statement on the bad third period or in the bad first period as well.
Do you pledge to support the Vancouver Canucks through the process?
It's a tough process.
I mean, I can't pledge my support. I can analyze with a critical eye.
Yeah.
My goodness. Oh, boy. Okay, so that was as ugly and dull of a first period as you can imagine, and you guys saw it. And you know what? You've seen way too many of those this year compared to last year, where the Canucks were such an exciting team. Not the case. But then for them, the crazy thing is for them to bounce back in the second and play the period that they did, where they're constantly coming at Buffalo in waves and keeping the puck in the offensive zone. And it just felt like, okay, that's the kind of energy on your toes type of play that they need to play with, and then just it falls off in the third period. I was surprised to see that. Like usually if you find it, you don't lose it that quickly. Like we don't see that kind of up and down within the game, but that's the story of this team this year. It's been a crazy ride.
So the sense we're getting, especially with all the trade activity around JT Miller and the near deal on Saturday with the Rangers, that this is a team that is kind of waiting for a shoe to drop. Have you ever been a part of something like that, a room like that, where you just know something and something substantial is about to happen and you've got to, because Tocchet's been preaching, come to the rink, worry about your job, worry about how to help the Vancouver Canucks win. But he has acknowledged it seems like distraction has crept into the room.
Isn't that's the message everyone is saying right now with Vancouver? Tocchet has said it. Even Demko after the game, like he looks pretty defeated, but he said, he goes, just got to worry about what I got to do. Everyone else has to worry about what they got to do. Like it's interesting with all this stuff going on in the dressing room that's the message that continually gets shoved out there. Like everyone just worry about your own stuff. So it would lead me to believe, having been in a few dressing rooms, there's been a few instances where maybe people are talking about other people's games when maybe their own backyard is not as spick and span as it should be. That's maybe just me reading into things. As far as being on a team waiting for the shoe to drop, I was, but in a different situation. Like I was on a bad team in Toronto that was waiting for the big sell-off to happen. Like we all knew it was coming. It was just a matter of when and who and, how that was going to look. And like ultimately it's different because we weren't battling for a playoff spot. Everything's a little more delicate now with this group because of, what the season, what has transpired over the season. And the fact that, these are valuable points, valuable games, and they're squandering a lot of these opportunities. So like, it's different than what I went through, but even in my situation, like still kind of thought about it, still kind of knew it was on the radar. And with all the noise, like, I don't care if you're not on social media or you've deleted this and deleted that, you've blocked whoever, everyone has seen this kind of stuff. It's way too out there and it has to be weighing on the group.
Nikita Zadorov calling the 6 months he had in Vancouver the coolest 6 months of my career. That's the same room. I mean, the brick and mortar at the very least.
In fairness, a lot of that, I believe, was about the playoff atmosphere in and around the city and Rogers Arena.
Yeah, I think all of it. It's just it's just impossible to think that. Looking at this team right now, looking at this city right now, the switch, the bad switch, has been flipped here, and we're in the netherworld all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's wild. And you know what? Even so, if you think about I was thinking about this morning, like the trade offers from potential teams that could be trying to get JT Miller. You know, like, so what was the one from the Rangers? It was like Hedl and Lindgren, and there was picks involved, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, picks will be involved. But if you're looking at this from Rutherford and Alvin's point of view, you still need players that are coming back that are going to keep you relevant and a good team.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's the Rangers or the Stars and Carolina, like those are some of the teams. Am I missing one? Like those are the teams that we're kind of hearing. Maybe the Bruins, but for me, the Bruins don't have the currency to make this kind of deal.
Maybe the Devils.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Frank would be
Maybe Jersey. That's another one. If you're kind of okay, so I was looking at this morning. If it's Hedl and Lindgren for the Rangers, that's your like package you're basing things around. If it's Carolina, who is it? Kotkaniemi. Like, can you try and pry? I mean, I would love to see Jalen Chatfield back. Hey, it's funny how time changes.
Wow,
right?
Wow, what a statement!
And then if it's Dallas, it's like, is it like Maverick Bork and Nils Lundqvist? You know what I mean? Like that doesn't really move the needle for Vancouver. Like, are you convinced that Kotkaniemi is going to be your second line center? And then you have to realize you're going down the middle of the ice. Pettersson, who has his, temperament the way it is, and Kotkaniemi, like you lose a lot of edge that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
There's no ideal situation here when it comes to making this trade.
No, so let's go through some of the names that have been rumored. We'll start with Carolina there. Kotkaniemi and Jack Roslovic, apparently, are two players that the Vancouver Canucks have eyed in the past. Tell us about those two guys.
I mean, Kotkaniemi's like been this guy in waiting for so long. It feels like I've had conversations where it's like this feels like the year for Kotkaniemi, and it never has really launched the way it was supposed to. And I think if you go back, like he got thrust into the NHL a little too early, and I think that maybe has stunted his upside. But he's not. Like he's not big or robust or physically, like overpowering. So that would worry me about Kotkaniemi. And Carolina would be getting a massive upgrade, if that's the centerman they're swapping out and bringing in JT Miller. Like think about what they would do. Aho, Miller, and Jordan Staal down the middle of the ice. My goodness, like have fun with that. And Roslovic is very skilled, has been a good scorer this year, but has, lacked that consistency. Like all the tools have been there for him, but it's never really taken off to the level that it maybe could have or should have. Now he's having a nice year this year, which is notable for sure, but you kind of think, okay, which Roslovic am I getting?
It would also have to be a lot more because he's a rental. He's a UFA. So
I think the idea is they'd re-sign him.
Exactly. And the Rangers deal. The Rangers deal is interesting because Hedl, out of all those forwards I mentioned, I think Hedl's the best one. It's just he's got the red flags with the concussions. And what is Ryan Lindgren going to do for the Canucks back end that they don't already have? They have, like that would be redundant. They need players that can move the puck on the back end.
Right. Talk to me about Dawson Mercer in New Jersey, who apparently the Canucks have eyed in the past, and whatever you know about Nemec. I understand he hasn't played a ton in the NHL.
Yeah, Nemec is an interesting one because he's drafted so high, and like that's a high upside guy that I think that's the guy that makes the most sense given the circumstances of what they have and what they need. And Dawson Mercer's a good player. Like he's, he kind of buzzes up and down the ice. He's very willing to get the puck into the middle of the ice, like not afraid to play in those higher traffic areas, quick hands, good wheels. Like I like Dawson Mercer. I think he's a good player. But the Nemec thing, like if you could try and pry him out, it would be hopefully similar to what Minnesota has done in getting Jiricek. And he's playing great right now. Like they're really happy with how he's playing, and he's playing on another guy that they pried out of Winnipeg on waivers, Chisholm. But that's the kind of if you're taking a swing at this thing, I would want that's type
the top
of guy.
end.
That's the guy that you need coming back. And like I think ultimately you can I'm not going to say that you can get by with whatever forward you're going to get back. You'd like to have a nice piece, but like the biggest area that they would need to have some kind of long-term future with is if they could bring in a guy like Nemitz.
A big reason why people are thinking about this sort of makeover, whether it's via just the Miller trade or it goes even deeper than that, is the quality of the hockey that they are watching. Which is more true? Rick Tocchet is playing this style of hockey because that's all that he can do, or this is a Rick Tocchet style of hockey and this is just what it looks like.
Yeah, I don't necessarily buy that it's just this is Tocchet hockey and he's not capable of anything more. Like, did we not watch very exciting games last year? Pretty sure
in the
we
first
did.
half. In the first half.
Yeah, in the first half, for sure. I have a hard time believing that in today's NHL, a coach who's as smart and with it as Tocchet is just saying, I do this and I don't do anything else. And like it's just this is how we're going to do things. It's almost like it's more nuanced and complex than that, where it's like he has his style for sure, which has a lot of shades of what we're talking about, where he wants it to be lower event, and maybe that's a little more lower event offensively, but you'll take the trade-off defensively because that's what quote unquote wins in the playoffs. I get that, all that kind of stuff, but there's obviously like the player element to things as well, where recently in Detroit. I know they've lost 3 in a row now. Todd McClellan blasted his team and said, just play effing hockey. Like, I think that message is something that doesn't get translated into how the Canucks are playing hockey. It's like, okay, yeah, your coach wants you to do certain things, but you can't be robotic about things and so mechanical. You also have to have an element of, we all grew up playing hockey, playing shinny, playing on the pond, playing on the outdoor rink, whatever, where there was a little, variance to how you were playing. It feels like the group, the players of the group have almost lost that, and I don't think it all should fall on the coach. Ultimately, like, if you're a player and you make plays and they work, the coach is not coming down the bench and telling you, hey, that was really smart, really like heady play, but don't do that again because that was different than what I'm preaching. Like if you do it, it works. Like it's just, I don't know. I think the worst of both has kind of happened this year. And it feels like a lot of it is like, well, that's what Tocchet's preaching. To a certain degree it is, but also to a certain degree, you just got to play bleeping hockey sometimes as a player.
And I wonder how many guys they have that can freelance and actually pull off and execute what they're trying to do. Like, it just doesn't seem like we're seeing many skill. Like last night stood out in the second period for Elias Pettersson because that looked like Elias Pettersson again, shaking and baking out of the corner and blind passes onto the tape of his teammates, and the shot was spectacular. So he's capable of it. We know Quinn Hughes is capable of it, but how many others are capable of making something out of nothing and actually feeling like they have the license to do so? I think that what you talked about is absolutely true, that I think there's a bunch of players out there that feel like they have to stay in their lane and not go out of it for fear of losing playing time.
I think Connor Garland is one of those guys. He can play hockey. Like he's lived a very outside of the box career already.
And he's a teacher's pet right now, so that works.
Right. And so Brock Besser is not as dynamic, so I probably don't put him into that category where he's got to, I know we talked earlier, maybe he's got to be a little bit of a go-getter, and in that time, it feels like we're in a different time right now where he has to be a finisher, right? Like that's what he does best. And so maybe he doesn't fit the mold of someone that can freewheel as much. But yeah, you're right. Like I think if you look up and down the lineup, Pius Suter's not going to be a big freewheeler. Teddy Bluger's not going to do it. Phil DiGiuseppe, all those kinds of guys. They're kind of nuts and bolts straight up and down. But you still have guys that should be able to do it. Jake DeBrusk should be able to do a little bit of, freewheeling and make some plays and have some creativity, right? As much as he is a straight line guy that will, should and will drive the net and be a finisher. It's just, you have to You have to do it for yourself to see and know that you can do it. And like as a team, when everyone's kind of feeling the mojo, everyone feels like, okay, well now I can get involved a little bit more. And I guess another point on the whole Tocchet thing, right? Like if you are turning the puck over a little too much, or if you are getting bumped off it, or you're making plays that aren't, the plays that you're supposed to make, I think you do have to watch out as a coach. Like if you are on it every single time, like if Pettersson does it and you're on him every time, or this guy does it and you're on him every time, I think that's where sometimes, and I don't know if Tocchet does this or not, I'm just saying in general, there are times you have to let it breathe because the player knows, player's trying to work through something, and eventually these guys are so good and so skilled that it will work. It's just, I think, the nuance of understanding when I have to let him know and when I just have to let that breathe.
Ferraro once told us a great story about playing for Al Arbour and the drop pass, right? Where he makes a drop pass. Sure enough, Al Arbour is all over him on the bench. Don't want to see that again. Sure enough, Ray makes another drop pass. It's in the back of the net. They lose the game. Al just looks at him. And basically at that point, Ray knew, I don't need to ever try that drop pass again. With where this team is, because the crazy part is you've noted, Frank, so many things are going wrong, so many distractions, and yet they're in a playoff race. Is this team worth adding to right now? Or do you have to have resolution on Miller before you go and make a further move?
Oh, man, I would be very weary about just being a true buyer and adding to this group and doubling down and say we really believe in this group, and I'll tell you why. Thatcher Demko is admittedly, by him, not playing to his capability. And this almost just feels like it's a throwaway year for him. And it's unfortunate because of how well Quinn Hughes is playing, but with Pettersson, call it what it is. He's paid like a top 5 player in the NHL. He's not playing like a top 5 player in the NHL. We can all agree on that. With the Miller situation, it's just there's too much going wrong to say that, we're going to go out and spend some currency, get rid of a prospect, get rid of a pick, and try and add to this group because we believe in it. Because even if the GM comes in and says that, I can't buy that those guys truly believe that the way this season has gone. So I don't believe this is a year that, or actually am certain this is not a year that you try and double down and go for it per se, like in the traditional sense. But if you can make a hashtag, this is such a hockey term, hashtag hockey trade that helps your room, then maybe that's the little fire that you get. But you're still working under the pretenses that Demko is not right, not at the top of his game, and so you've lost that separating factor that you once had going into a playoff series.
Blake, I consider Frank the authority on this program in terms of youth and pop culture.
You do?
Parlance.
He's a dad now. It's eroding before our very eyes.
Did you catch the hashtag?
Yeah.
Do people still talk?
See?
Okay.
He's stuck in the teens.
If Frank can do it, then we can get away with it.
He's stuck in the teens.
Man, remember back in the day, you would tweet something out and put an obscure hashtag, and people would think it's so witty and
yes,
not. People don't do that anymore.
No, it's not, and people even speak it less now. The other thing is Elon says hashtags don't even do what they used to do.
No, you don't need to do them anymore.
You're working as a search feature.
It's unfortunate what's happened.
Twitter's so old that you just said back in the day when you used to tweet.
Yeah. Anyways,
wow.
Hashtag thank you. Appreciate the time. We'll catch up next Wednesday, Frank.
All right, boys. Have a good one.